Welcome, everybody. I don't think we're connected yet. There we go. All right. Welcome, everybody. We're here for session 1. I'm Mary Beth Neely. And before we get started with session 1, we just wanted to invite Dr. Emily Smale up on the stage. She's going to briefly show us all how to use the Miro board throughout the meeting. Emily?
Great. Thank you, Mary Beth, and hello, everybody. So I will put a link to the chat for those of you who didn't get your Miro invite, but anyone else should have sent it around. And so I'm going to just quickly walk through our Miro board and show you all what we have. So you will see that there are several different sections of the board. And what we have set up here for people to test out the Miro board is a icebreaker here. So if you are new to Miro and you haven't used the platform before, you're welcome to play around with the Miro, and I have some instructions here on how to do that icebreaker. So we just have one here where you can go here and find an emoji or sticker, and then put it where you are from, and you can change the size and whatnot. So I'm here in Florida right now, and then we have an icebreaker, which is what we're going to be using for most of the sessions, which are what they call sticky notes. And so the way these work is if you just double click on a sticky note, it will pop up, and you can type something in there. And you can also drag these around, and if you want to make a new sticky note, you can copy and paste it, or you can go to this tab here where it has different options here on apps, and you can click sticky note and create a new sticky note there. So we invite you to that. And then we also have another icebreaker here just to do kind of thumbs up or thumbs down, or other emojis or whatever you'd like. So you can read the instructions here on how to create a thumbs up. And if anyone has any questions about that, please feel free to contact me. I'll drop my email in the chat. And then you'll see for each session, we have different boards where people can ask questions or put in different information. And again, you can just double click on any of these and write the sticky notes in. So that's the quick overview of our Miro, and we're going to leave it up for the whole week. So if there are any other comments that you all want to make as we move forward, please feel free to go to this and put any comments, thoughts, questions that you have.
Thank you, Emily. So should we start with the first session? So I hope everyone can see this slide. So this is the first session, session 1 on recent assessments of user needs. This will be a 1-hour session, and we will cover more or less what some of the user needs surveys assessed during this last year. So some housekeeping first. So please keep your microphones muted. If you have a question, posted it in the question tab. So the question tab is not the chat, it's questions tab. It's this one here in green. Or you can raise your hand for the discussions and then we can bring you to the stage. If we do not have time to go over all the questions, please post your question in the Miro board. So if you see the Miro board that Emily just showed for our session, we have spaces for each of the speakers. You can add your question there, and then we ask speakers to answer the questions there as well. And leave it there so everyone can check the questions and answers during the week. And there is also another space where you can share your comments about this session in the Miro board. So here's the Miro board for this session. So we have questions for each of the speakers today. And then in this blue space, you can share your ideas, your comments, what are the take-home messages that you got from this session. And today we will have 4 talks talking about the surveys, about user needs. So I would like to thank you, Erin, Lara, Elizabeth, and Federico for accepting the invitation. And I think we can start with the videos and then we go for the discussion later.
Urquhart, I'd like to thank the session conveners for inviting me to present some of our recent work. I'm going to provide a very brief overview of the GEO AquaWatch survey and the manuscript that we just submitted to Technological Forecasting and Social Change. I'd like to also thank my co-authors and AquaWatch for supporting this very important effort to better understand user perspectives of satellite Earth observation data for water quality management. As many of us probably suspect, despite the progress and opportunity provided by Earth observation data, the full and proper use of satellite data for water-related decision-making still remains limited. Our motivation and the objectives of the survey were to assess the understanding of satellite-derived water quality data products, to identify barriers and problems in the adoption of satellite water quality data products, and to analyze the trust in satellite water quality data products. Our goal and hope with the survey was to gain an understanding of capacity building requirements for both developed and developing nations, and to use this improved understanding to support targeted investments and to advance capacity within partner countries. Without going into detail of all 30 of the survey questions, broadly, the survey was made up of multiple choice and a couple fill-in questions related to participant characteristics, participant knowledge, attitude toward satellite-based Earth observation-derived water quality data, and barriers and problems in using and accessing water quality data. We use univariate and bivariate statistical analyses to explore participant knowledge, attitudes, and trust of Earth observation water quality data products and problems in adopting these technologies. After exploring the attitudinal traits linked to the use of Earth observation water quality data products, we use univariate analyses and correlation analyses to highlight relationships among varying attitudinal traits towards Earth observation data. Lastly, an attitudinal model was built to explain the determinants and implications of trust in Earth observation water quality data. The ad hoc survey was distributed globally via AquaWatch's listserv, community network, websites, and social media in July of 2019, and it remained open for 4 months until October. Survey participants had the ability to translate the survey into English, German, Chinese, Spanish, and French. Overall, the results from the survey revealed evidence of complex social and technical challenges related to water issues, Earth observations, and the relationship among users, decision makers, and governance systems. There were a total of 171 respondents, 131 of those which were eligible for analyses. Most respondents indicated little understanding of satellite Earth observation technologies. The most prevalent concerns in working with water quality data were accessibility and interpretability. There was a positive opinion of the usefulness of satellite Earth observation for water quality reporting. There was a high level of trust with satellite Earth observation data and a higher level of trust with in situ data. And in situ data trust was negatively impacted by data accessibility. What the bottom figure shows is a conceptual attitudinal model for empirical analysis. The top gray box indicates that users build trust with in situ data if they have relevant satellite Earth observation data and knowledge of how to appropriately apply the data toward their program objectives. This box is dependent on satellite Earth observation community, providing education and capacity building to the water sector, supporting both the knowledge of technology and the relevance to programs. The bottom gray box shows that in situ data trust is negatively impacted by the limitations of access to in situ water quality data, and the condition in this bottom box could be addressed through publicly accessible data hosting services to the water sector. So now that we have evidence of the challenges and barriers associated with satellite data for water quality management, what do? Work is still required to resolve the disconnects between technology and policy to ensure compatibility between conventional and new Earth observation approaches. A transdisciplinary approach to managing water resources is needed to bridge the range of water disciplines and take a key role in areas such as social issue, knowledge brokering, and translation. Improved accessibility to Earth observation data will improve understanding with visual displays of quantified results, compensating for various inadequacies of different knowledge forms and mitigated knowledge conflicts. Satellite Earth observation evidence may or may not find purchase in the public policy environment, but if it does, it will help create a circle if the chain is strengthened between more effective policies and better direct impacts and outcomes. Integrated knowledge management is therefore the servant of integrated water management. Thank you for your time.
I'm Lara Agnoli, and I'm going to present you the preliminary results of the study I'm conducting with my colleague Nikos Yorgantis for the Prime Water project. In Prime Water, our role is to understand the determinants and barriers in the adoption of GEO-based technologies by end users. In particular, our objective is to understand end-user attitudes towards GEO-based technologies and possible behavioral barriers like trust, social influence, or technological anxiety. At the same time, the project aims at understanding what are the practical barriers and the drivers in the adoption of these technologies. In order to reach this objective, we built a survey by questionnaire, and at the moment what you will see are the preliminary results based on a sample of 35 end users that we collected during the multi-user panels organized in the context of the Prime Water project. As shown in this table, the sample is pretty much divided into people who don't know these products at all, or know them but never use them, and people who have a different level of experience with the products. A first analysis of possible behavioral barriers in the adoption of this data highlight a quite positive attitudes towards using these technologies and trust also in these products, as well as high performance expectancy. This table summarizes the relations among the different constructs we analyzed in the project. And if we focus on trust, for example, it emerges that performance and effort expectancies together with attitudes, social influence, and facilitating conditions have a positive role in building up trust in satellite-derived water quality products. Instead, anxiety results to have a negative role on trust. So according to these preliminary results, self-efficacy, so the user perception of their ability to use this data has no impact on trust. When analyzing barriers in adopting monitoring Earth observation technologies, it emerged that the main barriers are of technical nature. So like, for example, the lack of information during cloudy days, or the inadequate resolution, or the limited parameters monitored, but are also of knowledge nature and of institutional nature. Knowledge is also one of the main barriers in adopting forecasting GEO technologies, together with organizational and institutional factors. When analyzing hypothetical choices of monitoring services by end user, the monitor parameters and the resolution drive end user choices and are much more important than the offered representation, the frequency, and the price. When we analyze instead the hypothetical choices of forecasting services by end user, the forecast horizon and again the monitor parameters drive the choice. And they are much more important than the temporal and spatial resolution and the price of the service. So this is a summary of the preliminary results that we are having with the Prime Water project. Thank you very much for your attention.
My name is Lizzie Gay Thomas, and I'm an environmental psychologist at PML. I've been working with Stefan on a survey that was done as part of the Waterforce project and in conjunction with the GEO network. So I'm just going to be picking out some of the results today. So this is by no means a comprehensive overview of the data. The main aim of the survey was to capture people's attitudes and opinions towards using remote sensing data within the field of limnology, and we had a few research questions. The first research question was around perspectives of value of the remote sensing to limnology. The second was about people's opinions of the responsibilities of different organizations to provide and ensure the quality of remote sensing data. And the third question was around the barriers and facilitating factors of the uptake of remote sensing within limnology. So the survey was sent out to all attendees of a GSA workshop, and it was also sent out on the GEO network mailing lists. So here's some information about the respondents. I loosely implemented a behaviour change framework called the Behaviour Change Wheel. This framework sees behaviour as the result of the interactions between people's capability, their motivation, and their opportunity to perform a behaviour. The influence of all these factors is different for different behaviours, and knowing more about what drives a behaviour can give us some insight into the best way to facilitate that. Capability refers to whether we have the knowledge, skills, and ability to engage in a particular behaviour. So I'm just going to be talking about knowledge today. So on the whole, people were really positive. Everybody could see that remote sensing has improved understanding of aquatic ecosystems and that it can improve our understanding and the management of these ecosystems in the future. Respondents also thought that limnology was really important for these different areas of study. For example, eutrophication, geography, climate change, for example. It was perceived as least useful for paleolimnology, resource competition, and biogeochemistry. So in general, people thought the remote sensing does have quite a lot to offer the different areas of scientific study. So the responsibilities. Overall, most people felt that space agencies should offer analysis-ready products and that they should be the ones to ensure that the data quality is very high. Research institutes were seen as the ones who should most likely publish methodologies, and they should have also have some responsibility with the quality of the data. People felt that governments should ensure that the data are free and open and easily accessible, and this was closely followed by the research institutes as well. So it's worth noting here that private companies were seen as the least responsible in all of these questions. So the barriers and facilitating factors around the uptake of remote sensing. There's so much I could say around this. And as I said, I'm just focusing on one aspect of capability, and that's knowledge. So we measure different types of knowledge, for example, expert versus procedural knowledge. Expert knowledge is knowing how things are estimated, knowing how things work, whereas the procedural knowledge is more about knowing about the process. So knowing which products will be relevant to your work, knowing where to get those products, and knowing how to work with remote sensing data. Of these types of knowledge, it was the procedural knowledge that was most strongly related to intentions to use remote sensing products. And because there's quite a lot of variation in the procedural knowledge, so quite a few people felt that they were lacking, this gives us an opportunity because it tells us that providing this kind of information is going to be more likely to get people using remote sensing data. So take-home messages of this are there are really positive opinions around using remote sensing products within the study of limnology. And one of the barriers to uptake is procedural knowledge. So focusing on showing people how to obtain and how to use remote sensing products will be much more effective in increasing uptake than making sure that, for example, everybody understands the physics behind it. So a word of caution, these results are preliminary. And of course, the sample might be biased. For example, people who are more interested in remote sensing will have been more likely to answer. But nonetheless, this can give us important insights. And the next steps are to continue to analyze the data on the other behavioral determinants, so motivation, opportunities. We asked a lot of questions about different aspects like trust, experience, needs, and funding, for example. And of course, we need to look at all of these different aspects in conjunction with each other using multivariate analyses.
Hello everyone, this is Federico Falcini from the National Council of Research in Italy, and within the frame of CERTO project, Copernicus Evolution Research for Harmonized and Transitional Water Observation, I'm going to tell you something about community requirements and user requirements. Well, from this picture, you already have a view of a large variety of users we are interacting with. We are all around Europe with different environment, different coastal environment, different needs, which means different requirements. Well, our stakeholders or users can be divided as intermediate users, just for instance, Copernicus service entrusted entities or downstream service providers. So those are people who actually need upstream data to build downstream services. But we also have final users, which are pure end users or research-based users. So those are people that actually need the information to produce, indicators or alert system or whatever you want. Why this kind of involvement? Because we want to be sure that because of this interaction, we are actually defining the most suitable ocean color remote sensing product that might be useful for tackling issues on water quality in coastal and transitional environment. And the last interaction we had with the European Space Agency was actually a good exercise. ESA was actually asking us to try to make an assessment of the COVID-19 lockdown on coastal environments. And with this exercise, we had to use all the available information in terms of remote sensing and ocean colors to try to understand if the water quality actually improved during the lockdown. And that was a sort of assessment driven by the user of what the ocean color status can help us, of what the ocean color status can tell us in terms of water quality in coastal environment. Well, indeed, after this interaction, we can say that the most wanted indicators, those are indicators based on total suspended matter. Here we have two examples. We have the maximum turbidity zone or the dredging impact indicators. So the interaction with the users actually allowed us to define those indicators, but also allowed us to understand that the users also want to have additional information that are supposed to go along with this kind of indicators. For instance, they are interested in correlating this information with the hydrodynamic regimes of rivers or coastal currents. Well, same story for indicators that are based on chlorophyll A concentration. For instance, we have the P90 and the phenology index. Those are indicators that might be related to coastal eutrophication problems, but even in this case, the user is actually asking us, yes, give me tools to make statistical analysis and give me other tools that can help interpreting what I can see from these indicators. And those are information that were precious for us in order to give all the necessary information that might be useful for building downstream services for coastal applications. Well, how do we interact with users? We spread around a spreadsheet where the users actually can fill with information on spatial and temporal resolution of parameters and indicators, type of aggregation. We really want to know if the user is most interested on daily products or weekly means or climatologies or whatever. We also want to know if the user is more interested on reprocessed products like statistical analysis or near real-time images, data format, and so on. So at the end of the day, after collecting this information, on one hand, we were able to build new products and indicators. On the other hand, we were able to understand that users really are looking for pre-analyzed information. They are really looking for 10 to 100 meter spatial resolution ocean color products, but they also want user-friendly visualization. They don't want to deal with a large amount of data, and they want to be able to highlight trends and anomalies without performing their own analysis. Well, another important aspect of Certo project and the interaction with the users is to make the users totally aware of the availability of products, ocean color products that are in the Copernicus Marine Service, and try to understand with the users what are the gaps of those products that are still emerging for coastal applications. So we really want to be sure that the users knows the fact that we have chlorophyll A concentration products of remote sensing reflectances. However, we want to understand with them how we can improve, or even better, how we can merge this biooptical and biogeochemical information to provide additional indicators. Well, at the end of the story, I have to tell you that what we learned from the users is they really want direct information based on alert systems. So they want everything that is necessary to build alert system. As I said before, they want to avoid to manage large amount of data, and they want a quick, and if you want a wrap-up information that might give some support to the monitoring strategies. For instance, the European Marine Strategy Framework Directive and the Water Framework Directive. And we are also expanding the concept of indicator by including social ecological system indicators. So we try to interact with users even to capture the social aspects that are related to issues on coastal environments. Well, I hope that was clear, and thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
I would like to thank you all the speakers for their presentations. And I would like to invite everyone to ask questions in the question and answer tab in the chat here, next to the chat, or you can also raise your hands for asking it orally. I would like to start the discussion or the question and answer asking all the speakers what are their users. So are they scientists? Are they policymakers? Are they industry? I think was not so clear for most of the talks. And I would also like to ask if they could state which needs GEO AquaWatch as a community could tackle. So can we start with Erin first?
Yeah, for some reason I'm having an issue turning on my camera. But for me, so I work at NASA Goddard, and I primarily work with kind of those in-between users. So kind of application users, scientists that may be developing tools and models or mobile applications for decision-making and management. So that's kind of who my users are. I don't know if that answers your question.
Sure, then which needs do you think GEO AquaWatch as a community could tackle?
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, I think that the biggest issue with a lot of my kind of those in between application developers is they don't know how to connect with their end users. And so we always kind of ask them, okay, you know, you're developing these mobile tools, you're developing these models and these applications, but have you kind of consulted your end user communities? You know, is the tools that you're developing really meeting the needs and the goals and the objectives of those communities? And I would say a lot of them do say yes, but a lot of them, they're still kind of stuck at that. How do we connect with decision makers? How do we connect with water quality managers? How do we connect with policymakers? And so that's been something that I've been struggling with, is trying to figure out, you know, is that my role at NASA, or is that, you know, the role of, you know, an agency like AquaWatch, to kind of help those middlemen, those scientists, those applied scientists, connect with decision makers and policymakers.
Thank you, Erin. Lara?
Yes, also in my case, the 35 respondents we get, and it's a preliminary result, what I showed you, are of multi from different kind of institutions. So not just the scientific, but also not just the academic, but also government and so on. And the primary need that needs to be addressed, and these are the first results we got, is that we have a lack of knowledge, but also some limits linked to the implementation of these processes into the institutional environment. So to make them enter into the routines, you know, of the different institutions. So together with technical limitations, so these are the basic needs that we are finding from our first results.
Thank you, Lara. Stefan?
Yeah, I don't have a great deal to add to those excellent responses. I would say, by looking at the GLEON community as we did, we are engaging with a community who are very active in applying fairly technical observation systems throughout the world in usually larger lakes and strategic lakes. And what we see is that although there's a lot of enthusiasm to start looking or to continue looking at remote sensing products, it's about capacity building and training. And I think the main obstacle here is that this community is actually very fragmented. So there's an opportunity here that's very clear to work with GLEON to resolve that.
Thank you, Stefan. Federico?
Well, I think I can just reinforce the two concepts that came now. Pretty much for the Certo project, as I showed, we are talking about a very broad range of users. So we go from port authorities to local governments or scientific-based entities or downstream providers. But even though we are experiencing this large variety of users and needs, I have to confirm what Stefan just said. It's a too broad community, and people are really not familiar in terms of products availability, and they're not familiar on how to use them. So transfer capacity, transfer of knowledge, and really make the users pretty much familiar with what is available, what can be improved, and how to use those data. This is a very big gap that we still have.
Thank you, Federico. So let's go to some of the questions in the system here. So there's one question from Karsten to Lara. How did you define trust?
Yes, actually, trust is a broad concept that is used in many different disciplines. What we did with this survey was to adapt the analysis of trust, and so a scale built on the concept of trust for technology to trust in new technologies. So with different conception, so trust in the outputs, trust in their capacity to use these tools, and trust in the tools in general. So we used actually a scale adapted from the literature and developed by Jean and other authors in 1998. So in order to build the big concept of trust into the technology.
Thank you, Lara. I think Karsten wants to also say something. Can someone bring him to the stage?
I think he'll come here in a minute.
Karsten, can you hear us?
Okay, now I can speak. So it's a follow-up question very quickly, because I think it's important. You answered, thanks, Lara, and you also in the chat, that it has to do with the perception and with the expectation that the one who you ask for trust has. And this goes very close to what I think it was Elizabeth was showing. That this procedural knowledge is quite important, because people have an expectation what they get from the Earth observation, which is driven by what they get traditionally from in situ. And there is this difference in the procedural knowledge, what we get from the Earth observation data. And I think the trust sometimes is there if people understand this difference and if they use it in the way the Earth observation data is measuring water quality, whereas trust is less if the expectation simply is not fulfilled. So I think this capacity building, even in an expert community, is quite important. And so thanks for all these presentations, which together give a very nice picture.
Thank you, Karsten. And following up the trust question, so there is a question from Tadesse, and he was asking if on how the community, and I believe it's not the remote sensing community, but the scientific community sees the remote sensing results or remote sensing research, or how they trust or how they accept it. So who wants to comment on this question?
Well, I can say something. As I told before, trust is a concept that is used in many different fields. When we talk about marketing and trust and consumer trust is a focal point. The matter here is to understand if the adoption of this technology is a matter of trust. And it's a matter of understanding what can increase the trust in these technologies. So actually, if the community will accept this concept of trust, we will see if the paper we are writing with Erin and the other colleagues will be published, and starting from this, we will better understand if the concept of trust is also important in understanding the adoption of these technologies. From the first results of Prime Water, we can see that it's not very much a matter of trust, but it's a matter of what are the drivers of trust. So it seems there is nothing linked to the ability of people to perform the task, but is very much linked to the expectancies of the performance of these technologies. Okay. So I hope I have answered to the question.
Anyone else wants to comment on this question? If not, then we can. There's another question suggestion by Mark Dole. Mark, do you want to ask it yourself, or? So the question or suggestion would be, could we think on some kind of systematic review or meta-analysis, bringing all the user requirements or assessments together? So based on what Lara just described, is Erin and Lara working together on a paper? Is it great? Or?
Yeah, so yeah, you see Laura's name kind of sprinkled across the presentations. Yeah, so Laura and I worked together on the GEO AquaWatch community survey. And then, yeah, she had, other activities with Prime Water. So, and I agree. I think that it would be great to kind of have an overarching kind of review type of paper of all these types of results. And I think that just commenting on kind of Laura's last comment about trust. So for the AquaWatch survey, we didn't really get at a lot of those drivers. We started to explore the relationships between trust and expectations and knowledge. But I think that for that activity specifically, we all the co-authors kind of agreed that this is just kind of the first stab at this work. And there needs to be specific follow-ons, including interviews with specific end users to really start to dig deeper in terms of what those issues are around trust.
Federico, what about Certo? Stefan wrote in the comment that for the water force, they're looking on a paper as well. So what about the Certo user requirements?
Well, we already published a paper that really wanted to highlight the interaction that we had with the European Space Agencies when they asked to try to assess the effects of the lockdown on coastal environments. Okay, so you can envision this experiment where the European Space Agency is an actual stakeholder or a user, and we wanted to we wanted to highlight all the gaps that we still have in connecting the dot between inland and marine waters. So that paper, which I can send you in a chat, I would say it's a good exercise to define the gaps and to try to find the solution, going from Sentinel-2 MSI to Sentinel-3 OLCI, and to try to see what I see from Sentinel-3, how is connected to Sentinel-2, and so on. And the interaction with the European Space Agency during the lockdown and during the COVID-19 lockdowns that we had all around Europe was a very, very good exercise to connect gaps and solutions.
Thank you, Federico. Stefan, you also just comment on this question. Can you also comment what are your ideas? Or do we discuss it offline, or maybe a quick online?
So we started doing the survey as part of the coordination activities of Water Force. And we thought this might lead into an opinion paper, but that is far from set in stone, and it might be quite interesting to see what overlap and what complementarity there is between these surveys, especially if others already have plans to publish something in the same direction. But this needs to be discussed with the other people who started this activity, so I suggest we take it offline.
Thank you, Stefan. We don't have a lot of more questions here, but then I have some. I saw in the presentations there was a lot of training needs, and my question would be, what kind of training do your users need? Training for remote sensing knowledge, remote sensing tools? What type of training? Feel free to answer.
I can start. So I'm just going to kind of speak specifically to what I'm working on at NASA. So for example, I'm leading kind of the charge for the upcoming PACE mission, which is a hyperspectral global ocean color instrument. And not only am I hearing from scientists, applied scientists, and decision makers, no one knows how to work with hyperspectral data. And so not only do they know how to find the data, locate the data, but they're intimidated by the volume of hyperspectral data. And this is just the beginning. So kind of, we have pre-existing types of trainings that you can look at multispectral data, But a lot of the users are not kind of accessing those trainings for hyperspectral, A, because they don't think it's going to be able to handle it. B, it's just there's so many questions from all the different communities of how we're going to handle this data. And so I think that starting with very basic capacity building and trainings and tutorials is the first step. From there, it's demonstrating maybe local or regional types of applications and tools that users can get their hands on. So that's just kind of from my perspective, where to start.
Anyone else wants to jump in, or?
I think what we see is that all the education training targeted at undergraduate to postgraduate students is very well received and increasingly available globally, although I only know about examples in English. What we need in addition is to provide professional training for people who have jobs in water quality management and decision making. And I don't think we've spent as much, well, not in Europe anyway, not as much effort in that direction. So that's worth exploring further. I think also that's what filters through in Lara's presentation from Prime Water.
Federico?
Yeah, I would say that a good experience is the involvement, the direct involvement of users in projects, or even research activities. Why not? That's a very fundamental tool to have a direct relationship with them and a direct transfer of knowledge. So something that is not based on actual training courses, but is actually based on a real life interaction that you have to have. So it's a good connection between users and needs. I found personally this experience really important, and it gives a gained value respect to any kind of formal training that we can set up. Just involve the users in projects. So it's a very good exercise.
Thank you, Federico. Yeah, I think one thing that Stefan mentioned, that most of the training that we see is in English. I know that NASA RSET has one in Spanish as well for water quality, but there's not many. And then my question would be, in your user survey, did you look for users in the Global South? Or how representative are people in the Global South in this survey?
For the GEO AquaWatch, Laura, you're going to have to remind me, just because I remember you looking at it kind of the most recently. But I can say that for the GEO AquaWatch, it was underrepresented. Unfortunately, I think that for the results of ours, it was a lot of respondents and participants from North America, and we did try to kind of filter those responses out to look at, the results and the analyses of those two different groups and the differences between. But Lara, do you have any follow on that? I think it was a little limited, though.
Yes, actually, most of respondents came from America. Yeah. We had 12.2% of our sample coming from Africa. But thinking about and talking about the concept of knowledge, what is important that we highlight from this study is that there's no difference of knowledge requirement between the North Hemisphere and the South Hemisphere. So according to our statistics, the need of knowledge is something generalized all around the world.
What about the user needs? Like for products, are they the same or are they different?
Also, in this respect, from what are our results, there seem to be no difference. No statistical difference in different needs. So needs are generalized.
Thank you, Laura. And Federico or Stefan, do you want to comment? Or
on that last point, perhaps worth noting that whenever we've heard from GEMStat, who are, of course, very active on the capacity building part and filling data gaps for the global ambient water quality SDG reporting, we always hear that actually the enthusiasm and uptake in Africa is quite good, relatively speaking, for the size of the community. And a difference they see in the reporting strategies with Europe, for example, is that in Europe there are several countries who say, but we're already reporting to European directives. So in the absence of over-reporting, you could actually expect far greater uptake of emerging methods, including remote sensing, but also citizen science in Africa. It just needs to have that support rather than a push.
We have a question from Mary Beth here in the question and answer tab. Are there lessons learned about not to ask or how best to advertise your survey or designing your survey to avoid abundant survey responses?
Yeah, I'm happy to give a quick comment. Leave it to the professionals. If I'm being very crude, you can sort of separate our community into engineers, scientists, and from multiple disciplines. But it does take training to build a non-leading set of survey questions. So I was very happy to work with Lizzie, who is properly trained in this. I can see that the other examples have also really evolved in that respect compared to previous surveys we've done. So it's really nice to see these results.
I would echo that. Make sure that you either have a social scientist or someone that is very familiar with designing surveys. Have multiple people look at the questions before you disseminate it. In my own personal experience, keep it short, less than 20 questions. If the most important questions put at the beginning, do not ask about political affiliation. Don't lead, questions that people could feel alienated or they're worried that their identification is going to be used against them in some way. But yeah, that's just my experience. From the get-go, make sure you have the social scientists on board to be able to review and design.
Federico?
Yeah, if I can add 5 cents to the discussion, I totally agree. As a scientist, when you start to design a questionnaire or a survey, you have questions in mind and you have things that are from your side, but then they cannot be read in the same way from the other side. So in Certo project, we found really, really useful to have a one-to-one interaction with our users. So maybe because, we have to thank the lockdown, so we could not organize meetings and workshop and so on. So we had to pursue the surveys by, calling people one by one. And it was very relaxing chat related to what they do, what they need, what they would love to have. And so you really have to take your scientific hat away and talk to them as they were, colleagues or friends that they are just telling you the problem that they have to face in a bar. And from that point, we were able to build a spreadsheet and surveys that were already, in the line that the user communicated to us in an informal way. That was really, really useful for Certo project.
Thank you so much, Federico. So I think we can wrap up this session with the user needs. We still have 3 minutes, so we can have a very quick coffee break or just a few time to relax a little bit before the next session. I would like again to thank you all the speakers today for their availability and for the presentations and for answering the questions. And I just want to remind everyone that the Miro board will be open for the whole week, so you can post your comments, your views, your take-home messages on the Miro board, so we can look for that. Thank you so much, and see you in the next session.